Hello, my name is Kirioth, and today we are going to talk a little bit about the idea of cheating when it comes to painting miniatures for 40k, or indeed any other hobby, AOS or whatever. And before we get started properly, apologies for the voice. It's been doing this on and off the last couple of days, that's why videos have been a bit thin on the ground. I don't know why it's happening, but it is. But I wanted to record, so we're just going to push through it and hope that it doesn't get any worse. Although it already feels like it is getting worse. So, let's talk about this idea of cheating when it comes to painting in this hobby. This is almost entirely brought up by the fact that the contrast paints are soon upon us, and for the most part, it feels as though the reaction has been pretty good to them. It feels as though people have been excited, they've been interested, they've wanted to know what can be achieved, what they can do to change up their painting method and perhaps make things interesting, more fun, a bit different, a bit quicker. Especially, I've seen from a lot of people who aren't massive fans of painting, who don't really enjoy that side of the hobby. They want to speed things up. It's not the bit they like the most, and so this is like a nice opportunity to make that side of things go a bit quicker. There is also, however, people who are actually going and deciding that using contrast paints will be effectively cheating when it comes to painting miniatures. And I'll be honest, it is an attitude that I have a massive problem with, for several reasons. The first is a very basic and standard thing, which is that there are no rules for painting miniatures. There is not a set of guidelines of approved methods, approved rules for painting miniatures. That doesn't exist. When it comes to painting stuff for, your personal army to get it ready to go on the table or to go on display, the only person who decides the rules for that particular force is you. You decide the level to which you want to paint it. You decide how much detail you want to put in there. You decide how much freehand you're going to do, if any. You decide how many technical paints you're going to use, if any. You decide the colours, the layout. All of that is down to you. There is no single unifying document that tells you how you should paint your stuff. Is an airbrush allowed? Are you allowed to use certain washes and glazes, or are those considered cheating and too easy? That doesn't exist. It's entirely a personal preference thing. The whole thing with painting is that it is incredibly subjective. It's based entirely on what you want to achieve and what you are capable of. So the idea of applying a statement to a new set of paints, in the form of the contrast paints, as cheating already makes little to no sense, because they're not contravening any rule set that is in place. The only rule set is in place is the one that you have in your mind, and no one person is the arbiter of how everyone paints their shit, just like no one person is the arbiter of how you play 40k. I mean, if one person did get to decide all of that, there would be a significant number of people who would be decidedly unhappy, because it would mean it would be no longer for them, which is why that doesn't exist. There's also, I think, an issue with it in terms of, I won't say like a confidence thing, it's more like a self issue. And I think it's the idea that the label of cheating is applied because of almost like the fear of work being devalued. So if you sit there and you paint an army and you take your time and you do all these methods you've learned over the years, you painstakingly go over, you create something you're happy with, and then someone else shows up and does something that is, similar, but they blast through it in a week. It's taking you a month, they do it in a week because they've used contrast paints. It's the idea that somehow them using alternative method to gain a similar result devalues what you have done. It devalues the amount of time you have spent on it. It devalues the amount of effort you have spent on it. It is detrimental to you, despite the fact that actually it's not really affected you in any real way, which honestly it hasn't. That's a worrying mindset. That's a dangerous mindset, because the only thing that can actually devalue your effort and your work is you. You're only doing it for you to begin with. You're only painting for you to start with. The only exception to that is when you're doing things for, say, commission painters, for instance, or actually entering a competition. If you are entering Golden Demon, or you're going for Slayer Sword, or whatever, then you're not painting just for you. You're painting for people who will judge your work. You are attempting to do the absolute best that you can do in an effort to win something. But for every other instance, only, in the case of commissioned painters, you are doing something to make the client happy. You are painting to a standard that you've been paid to paint to. If they want the gold standard, you need to give them the gold standard because, well, you're a commissioned painter. That is your job. That is what you've offered, and that is what they have accepted. For everything else, though, it's not a competition. It's not a competition. You're not being paid by someone. The only person that needs to be happy with the end result is you. And if you look at your finished product, if you look at the models you've painted that you've painstakingly put hours into, and you go, yes, I'm happy with this, then you see that someone else has done something similar, using a different method that has taken less time, and go, oh, well, I just wasted all my time. That's not their fault. What you've done there is you've projected your dissatisfaction with how you've spent your time onto them. It becomes a case of, oh, I didn't realise I could have done that quicker, and becomes, well, they're full of shit because they cheated to get the effect that I got. Except that's an incredibly unhealthy way to look at anything. They didn't paint it specifically to show you up. You didn't paint your army specifically to say to that person, look, I'm much better than you at painting. At least you shouldn't have done. You should be painting for the joy of it, for the fun of it, for the... even the social aspect of it when you share your models online. I post pictures of my dreadnoughts constantly. I've finished the first 8 dreadnoughts in my stupid dreadnought army, and I know full well that the paint scheme on them is simple, it's relatively quick, it's messy as hell because it involves a hell of a lot of rust weathering powder, which is now literally just all over this fucking office. It's unreal how much red and orange there is all over this place now. I know that there'll be people who look at it and go, oh, that's a bit simple, or oh, I don't really like that colour scheme, I don't really like that paint scheme, I think you've used too much rust there. Instead of using it as like an actual rust effect, I've almost used it as like a secondary colour, and I've done that because I like it, because I want to. I'm not painting these dreadnoughts to enter them into Golden Demon. I'm not painting them to go to someone and go, hey, look how much better at painting I am than you. I painted them that way because I liked them that way. I wanted to do it that way, I liked the way it looked, and so I went with it. That is what I assumed for most people is the default state. You are doing this because you enjoy it. You're painting because you want to paint. Even if you don't necessarily enjoy the process of painting itself, you enjoy the outcome. You enjoy the point after the painting, where you can put the army on the table and go, yes, I've got a fully painted force. I like that. That's good. Someone else doing something with tools that you refuse to use doesn't make your work worse. And it doesn't make what they do less valuable or less good. Because the only person who has the power to decide that is you. You don't get to dictate to other people whether their method is appropriate or not, whether it goes against the rules or not, unless you are a judge in a competition. Which, funnily enough, unless you are a judge in a competition, you're not a judge in a competition. If you're just some guy perusing Twitter, uploading pictures of your stuff, and you see someone has done something similar and taken less time, you don't get to decide that they've cheated because they haven't contravened any rule. The only rule that they've contravened is the one that you've made up because you are suddenly dissatisfied with what you've done. Now, the way to avoid that is either to accept that new things happen, things change, new products arrive, and that occasionally might make things easier for people. And if that does make things easier for people, then surely by extension, that could make things easier for you. If you look at a particular method you've used and find that, say, contrast paints are achieving that method, and actually it's achieving it a lot quicker, well, guess what? That's still good news for you. Because you now have a way to skip that step. And by skipping that step, what do you do with your time? Well, you now open it up to improve other areas of painting. If you are completely satisfied with everything you do and everything you achieve with paint, if you are completely happy with the level you're at, if you don't want to improve, if you want to just stay where you are, then contrast paints make no difference to you because you're happy with what you can do. If you want to improve, if you want to get more efficient with time, and you find that actually this particular contrast paint does what I want it to do, but quicker, what can I do with that extra time now? Well, you can use it to improve areas that you're not happy with. You can use it to build on the base provided by the new tool. A new tool isn't cheating. A new tool, if it makes things faster, isn't necessarily something that is a negative thing. If all it does is give you more time to work on your technique in other areas, then the only thing that can happen is that you get better quicker than you thought you would. If you can't look at something that makes things easier without thinking, no, this should be hard, then it just means that your priorities for what you do are not the same as the people who are going to use that tool. They're not cheating based on any rule. You've just decided that because they want to do things quicker, that they are somehow lesser. But you also don't get to make that call to begin with anyway, because the only person whose opinion is relevant when it comes to this stuff is your own, unless that person is asking for feedback. And if that person isn't asking for feedback, if that person is saying, hey guys, I did this, and that is the entirety of their statement, then essentially all you're doing by thinking they're cheating is making your idea of how you spend your time less than it was. It just doesn't seem healthy. And I can't think of a time where I would look at someone else's stuff and go, oh wow, they did that way quicker than me, and then think, which must mean I've wasted my time. Which must mean that they've somehow broken the rules that don't exist. Like, it just doesn't sit well, because it's so dismissive of something that could actually be used to make a real difference to not just people who don't want to paint or want to paint quickly, but also your own technique and your own time. You know, you could do extra things with that. So to ignore it and declare it as something you'll never use because it's cheating feels like just, cutting something out due to spite without actually recognising that you could use this too, and you could produce even better things than you could before. Unless you're happy with what you're already doing, in which case, why does it matter? Because you're already happy with what you're doing. So why would you consider it cheating? It's very rambly, but I hope you get what I'm saying. I hope you get what I'm aiming at there. The only person who can really decide what is and isn't cheating is you, and the only thing that you can apply that to is your own stuff, because it's all subjective, and it's all based on what you want to do with your time and whether you're happy with what you do with your time. You can't put that judgment on other people, because frankly, what you think of their stuff, unless they've asked for your opinion, is entirely irrelevant. The only person that you're making annoyed by saying that stuff is cheating is effectively yourself. And that doesn't sound like a great way to go through the day, Anyway, let me know what you think of the idea of cheating when it comes to painting down in the comments below. My voice is now actually properly giving out, so I will very quickly sign off, click all the things, Patreon video, subscribe, all of that stuff. Sorry, good mic. And I'll see you for the next one. Toodaloo.